Get ready to experience the pulse of the outdoor community as we dive into the stories of people's journeys into the outdoor world. And we are rolling. So, hello, my name is Mitch Dean, and welcome to the Outdoor Pulse. Today we have Natalie on. She is a Camp Gladiator instructor and hikes a bunch of 14ers out here in Colorado. And she's originally from Dallas, Texas. So, how's it going, Natalie?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to have you on. So, we'll start off with just kind of the outdoors and how you originally got into it and what kind of like your first steps into the outdoor community and what those were.
Yeah, well, growing up in Texas, there's not too much going on. Well, like in Dallas especially. You hike to the bar. And so I came out to Colorado when I was like 15 on a church camp, and that was really my first experience with the outdoors because we did go on a hike. We were out in Estes Park. I mean, you have to go hike in Estes.
Estes is beautiful.
And from there, I was like, yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to live out here. So 13 years passed. I was able to move out here. And right before I moved out here, my cousin was already living in Estes, and I would visit him like the year prior to my move. And I actually hiked Twin Sisters. So it's just a little 12er, but it was really great to try out, kind of get that higher altitude feel. And from there on, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm addicted. I saw Long's Peak and I claimed, I was like, I'm going to hike Long's Peak. I don't know when. I know it's not the hardest 14er, but it's challenging and everyone, I feel like, kind of wants to do it. And that just struck my love for hiking, and it just feels really good to get out there. So from then on, I also would like travel around the world. And before I even moved out here, I had hiked through Machu Picchu. I also got to hike Rainbow Mountain, which is almost 17,000 feet out there in Peru, which is
That's awesome.
crazy. Yeah. And then when I actually moved here, my friend Tommy, who's a very, very avid hiker, especially on 14ers, he's the one who took me on my first 14er, and it was Antero, difficult class 2. So perfect for someone who's never done a 14er. It was great. And I was like, yes, I'm so into this, even though I'm like asthmatic and like could barely breathe. But I mean, you just fall in love, right? Like you get out there and that adrenaline becomes an addiction. And now I'm at 16 complete 14er summits, 2 fails, but they were winter.
Yeah.
Tommy also got me into the winter hiking on 14ers too, which is a different breed.
So, how long ago was your first 14er that you hiked exactly?
It was like 2 years, 1 month now, because
So
it
in
was, yeah,
so in 2 years you've hit.
2018.
So in 2 years you've done 16 14ers. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. It's been a little bit slow as of lately, just with the fires here in Colorado and being
Yeah.
asthmatic. So just protecting my lungs. I am planning to get out there, like hopefully this Friday, and get another one in, and hopefully more. I want to obviously get more, doesn't matter when.
And then how long ago was that when you were in Estes Park kind of looking at the mountains and just kind of had it in your mind that you were going to move out here?
So the very first time was when I was 15. So that was 2005. And then when I went there again as an adult, that was July 2017 with my cousin.
And that
And that's when I saw
2017
Long's
one,
Peak.
yeah,
Yeah,
2017 was the
yeah.
big. So
Yes,
really
that was the
quickly,
pinnacle.
the quick turnaround. You got out here pretty quickly after that. Then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm like, okay, have to find a way. And the universe gave me a way. Like, great. I'm literally packing my boxes up and I'm ready to get out there now.
That's awesome. So when you got out here, what was the first 14er you did again? The
Antero.
Antero.
Yes, yes. It's near the Collegiate Mountains. I forget which range that is. Shame on me. But it is near like Princeton, Yale, all of them. And like down south of Antero is like Shavano and Tabaguash and like Holy Cross. So it's a good one to do.
So when it comes to 14ers, if you've done a decent amount now, so if you had any advice for someone kind of like first getting into it, so for that first climb, what were some of the things that you wish that you would have known going into it or known more about or been more prepared with?
I would say, I mean, my first climb was like a more difficult one, but all of them, because I've done several class ones that are easier than the first one I did. And what I always tell people is they're all hard. It doesn't matter what level they are, they're all hard. And just know that it does kind of take a toll on your body to be that high up in altitude. So, like, acclimate a bit more. Um, Also, just like start early. That's number one. Like, I've seen so many people, they just say in the summertime, especially, they're like, okay, yeah, so we could start at like 7 or 8 a.m. And I just look at them like they're crazy because they're going to be hit by like Colorado summer thunderstorms, and
Yep.
that's how people die on 14ers, because they get struck by lightning or you get caught in hail, whatever it may be. So, get to the summit and be below tree line by 10:30, 11 a.m. latest. So that means you've already hit that top and you're back down,
Yeah.
getting to your car. Also, what I have learned is whatever 14ers.com says in miles, just go ahead and add another mile or two. Whenever I track it with my watch, I'm always seeing that it's another mile or two longer. So just expect that. And water, tons and tons and tons of water. I was given the advice to go ahead and bring a lot of water, which I'm glad I did, because I've seen a lot of people who just bring that one little water bottle. And I'm like, I don't know what you're gonna do with that.
I've already ran into that and had to hand out water because I'm looking at people
Yes.
struggle. I'm like, you look like you need a little bit of water there.
Yes, I've definitely done that. And night before, personally, I carb load. Sometimes I'll even carb load a couple days prior, and that's actually something that we're taught in when you are becoming a certified personal trainer. It's just about carb loading properly. You can do it about 3 days prior to a muscle endurance type workout, which is hiking a 14er for sure. And just know, like, your body does need those carbs. So especially for like my women out there, like, who are so carb conscious, carb load. I promise it's fine.
You're gonna burn them all off. No, carbs are
Oh,
so important.
absolutely.
I've been soccer and climbing, and I can tell when if I go into a big like a with rock climbing, you're always eating carbs just all the time because if you're climbing every other day, you're just always carb loading
Oh
because
yeah,
climbing is one of those
exactly.
sports that just drains you. So, and then soccer
Yeah,
too.
and your muscles are
Oh yeah,
working like no other.
and our coaches would always be like, "Okay, we got a big game tomorrow, so eat your carbs tonight." So
Yes. See,
I've
carb loading. It
had
doesn't
that
matter.
drilled into my head since I was in high school. So I'm kind of lucky with
That's good.
kind of having that, but I've not really gotten into the 14ers too much. I've hit a couple 13ers since I've been out here. So, but it's
Some
definitely something
13ers
that
are a lot harder than 14ers are here.
my favorite one that I've done so far, since it's in between all those 14ers in the Breep. I'm gonna say it wrong, and a bunch of people are gonna be like, "You said that wrong," but Breitbert or yeah, I guarantee,
Bierstadt?
yeah, Bierstadt. That's the one, and it
Yeah.
has Bierstadt and I forget the other ones all around it, but or Pikes Peak's right there too, right?
Like,
It's all that. There's like
you
three
could
or
see
four.
Pikes from Bierstadt.
Yeah,
Yeah, from Bierstadt, you'll see Grayson Torreys. You're
that's the
going
other
to
one. Yeah,
see Sherman kind of out in the distance, and there's like Gemini Peak, which is a 13er. The DeCalibron
I
Loop you
did
could see from there.
Square Top. Square Top, you can see all of them from there too. And Square Top's at
Yeah.
13.8. And I remember the thing about that is that there was nobody on top. It was just me and my dog for like 20 minutes. And I'm like, where's the
Oh, that's the
people?
best.
Because all the parking lots were like jam packed. And I'm like, where's all the people at? And I'm like, afterwards, I was talking to people. They're like, yeah, they're all in the 14ers around you. And I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I didn't even think about that. So it was kind of
I have
funny.
not done Square Top yet. Just since I have been so super focused on
The
just
14ers, yeah.
bagging all the 14ers, but they are a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoy all of them as long as I'm up high, I'm good.
Being into climbing, I'm definitely looking forward to getting into the 14ers and even 13ers that are like the class 3, class 4, even like
Yes,
the higher ones. Because coming from a climbing background, I know that you use ropes and helmets and things like that at a certain point,
yes,
and
yes,
you start getting into that territory, which I think would be
yeah.
kind of the ultimate goal.
You would like it a lot. I would say probably like the the hike I did before Long's Peak was actually Torrey. So I had done Grays as my second 14er, and I was with a friend from Sea Level, and she won. Oh, that's the other thing, y'all. Like, just prepare for the worst. I did Grays in August, and it was 20-degree wind chill. But I mean, we were freezing. I did not have enough base layers, anything like that. Just prepare for the worst in weather. That is key advice right there. And so we did not go to, traverse into Torrey's, but that worked out because I'm sure you have heard of like the knife edge, especially on Capitol. There's like 100-foot knife edge where it's just like sheer drops on the side. So Torrey's actually has the Kelso Ridge because it's linked up to Kelso. And you can access it from the Grays and Torrey's trailhead. And that is class 3 with a very small class 4, like 50, maybe not even 50 feet, maybe like 20, 30 feet of a knife edge. And I think you would enjoy that. It's dope.
So for everyone, can you go through what each of the classes mean for the mountains and what that kind of entails? Because
Sure.
we're going through all this, and it would just be nice for everyone to. And I know that you're
Yeah.
more read up on that than I am, so
Yeah, yeah. So they go from class 1 through 5. And then, as you know, as a climber, you have your 5.1 through, I think it's 5.8, right?
5
And
point. I think the hardest climb in the world right now is a 5. I think they've hit 515 finally,
oh, wow.
but
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
but
So,
yeah.
like,
So
because I am a hiker, I really just focus on class 1 through 4, which there are only in Colorado, as far as the 14ers go, they only go up to a class 4 as far as like how you get up there. Now, there are like saddles, so like the in between of each peak, like the Maroon Bells that starts, you can, there's a route that does become class 5, and class 5 means ropes. So class 1's the easiest. So just think, trekking poles always helps just for that extra stability. But you're not going to be like on your hands and feet or hands and knees or trying to like bear crawl up. You're pretty much just going to go ahead and walk right up. Doesn't mean it's not hard, like I mentioned. It's just not as technical. Then you have your class 2s where you might start scrambling a bit. So maybe there's moments where you are using your hands to kind of get over a boulder, and you're just kind of like being like a mountain goat through
yeah,
the boulders. And that usually happens more of like the home stretch. So like the end where you're trying to get to the summit. Class 3 is where everyone will start to recommend wear a helmet. And that usually just means to kind of help you determine like what the different classes are, because some people are like, oh my gosh, like I felt like that class 1 was harder than this class 2, or I thought this class 2 was a lot easier, the class 3 also means like there's a lot more exposure. So like rocks can be falling, shooting off. It can mean it could be pretty like loose scree. So like almost that like loose rock where it's just, you walk on it and you just sink, which that is, that's definitely Bros, and it sucks. I will never repeat Bros in the summer because you just sink in. But you are just scrambling a lot more. You are kind of like rock climbing without any ropes too. Like it's safe enough. The rock is secure for the most part, to go ahead and do a lot more elevation gain a lot quicker versus like switchbacks, right? And then class 4, you still don't need ropes. There are times when people feel the need that they need ropes. And with that, it can be everything from scrambling, bouldering, a lot more of a fast elevation gain that you are doing. Definitely wear a helmet. That exposure, where you might have like sheer drops on both sides of you may be happening. And then the class 5, like I mentioned, does start going into more of that rock climbing. I've heard of people that have done the Maroon Bells Traverse with no ropes, and that, saddle is a class 5. Uh,
But not
they're
a
brave.
hard class
Yeah,
5.
yeah, yeah. It's not a hard class 5. Like if you're very experienced and you are brave enough to be like, I think at that point you're probably like well up in the 13,000 feet. And Maroon Bells is definitely the most, I would say, recognizable peaks out in Colorado because it's so beautiful. It's like Colorado's like
Yeah.
like state picture pretty much. So if you can just imagine that, and if you wanted to free climb it, but I mean that's also how people die. So class 5, I recommend, grab your ropes, grab your helmet, be with someone that knows what they're doing. But yeah, definitely like class 3 and 4 is where you're gonna want to bring a helmet. And I mean like a good helmet too, a good hiking helmet. I've had people bring like a bicycle helmet. That's fine, but then I've heard on class 4s, like I'll see stories of people on class 4s and just like rockfall happens and it has completely shattered their helmet. So just know that.
Yeah, helmets are always important. I mean, in climbing, once you start getting into more dangerous climbs, it's always definitely suggested to wear a helmet. Of course, with a
For
lot of
sure.
climbs, it's a lot of the climbs that I've done, you don't need a helmet down at the red a lot of the times because a lot of the climbs are overhung and the falls are safe. I mean, there still
Okay.
is a danger, but you're not under the risk of rock falls like you are with the loose gravel and the loose
Yes.
rock and
Yes.
climbing up like that. So
Especially in gullies. Oh man, they're terrible. When I did Long's Peak, I stopped because Long's Peak is in Rocky Mountain National Park. Estes is a super high destination, and people just think that they could go into it and be totally fine, and they're not. And so in the trough, which is a gully, I mean, there's like speed hikers, and so they're just like coming down so fast, and they're shooting rocks, which is very just rude in the hiking community. But I mean, these things can happen, and so wear a helmet, protect your head, and that way search and rescue doesn't have to come for you.
last thing you want happening.
Yes, which I personally was not in that situation, but someone of my group was. Yeah.
Not a fun one to be in for sure.
No. It's
And
like
sometimes it's a beyond your control though. I mean, you're out in nature, so I mean, things happen.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
you
expect
you
the
are
worst.
out there.
Expect that you are in a sense like risking your life. Like, it's not a safe sport. I mean, even though it's not going to happen on like a class one, but like, just think if you get dehydrated or like a heat exhaustion or a heat stroke or, a full on asthma, I don't, whatever that may be, like you just weren't well prepared. Like these things can happen and you're high up. So rescue can take a long time, which is why I think, those things can become fatal or, a medical expense.
Yeah, I feel like for some people it's probably almost like they think that it's going to be easier because they're in like the parking lot, like, oh, I can see the peak from here. It's like doesn't look that far away.
Right. And then they start doing it.
And
They're like, are we there yet? And then the joke is, yeah, you're almost there. And it's like 2 hours later.
exactly, because it does it when an environment's as big as the mountains. Everything, the perspective of it is your perspective. You're just not used to looking at something that's that big, and then
Yeah.
you start walking, and it's like it's nowhere near as far as you thought it was.
Nowhere. You're looking forever. Where is it? Or you see the summit and then you continue on and you're like, where did the summit go? Or like what you thought was the summit, they're like, no, it's behind that part of the like peak. We call it just a false summit. I forget which one it is. I have not done it yet. My friend has. I think it's Belford. And my friend's like, just expect like 7 false summits. And it's just gonna annoy you the whole time. And I think Belford is like one of the like 14 miles round trip. It can be 15 round trip or 16 round trip if you want Oxford as well. And he's like, yeah, it's just terrible because it just brings your like hopes really far down. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to continue on.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, not the peak. Oh, not the peak. Oh, not the peak.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like psych.
So, of all the ones that you've done so far, do you have a favorite 14er that you've completed yet, or?
um, hmm. I would say, oh man. I mean, I'm probably gonna be like totally trash for like saying it's gonna be like Long's Peak, but because people are gonna be like, really, really, you have not done enough. And I haven't. I haven't done a lot of like the really beautiful ones, like Huron and Missouri, and you know,
Have you done
all of that.
Maroon Bells yet?
I have not. I have not. It is on the list, not for this year. It is, yeah, possibly more like next year, just because of just where it's at. I mean, from
Yeah,
Denver, it's
it's
really
pretty
far
far. Yeah.
away. Yeah, and I would want to make sure I have enough time to hit both of the bells up, because I am not going to do the saddle where it's a class 5. I'm just gonna go up one and then, next day go to the other. So right now it's longs or even just doing the Kelso Ridge into Torreys. I just think they're like really fun, mentally challenging, but like so rewarding. I I want to do Snuffles this year, and so I think that one's going to be my favorite, just because I've been in the San Juan Range region, and it's so beautiful. I mean, it's just like unreal over there. So I think once I really start hitting up the San Juans, then I can say like, oh yeah, they're like all my favorite down there. But for now, I would say longs, and it could just be my personal obsession with it that happened 3 years ago.
Yeah, you got it in your mind, and then when you finally did it, it was one of those like accomplishments. So like a personal
Yeah,
like
it,
milestone. So it holds a special
exactly.
point.
Exactly. So it was a lot of fun, and I did it with my good friend Tommy, and because he was with me in that moment when I first saw Long's Peak and learned about it. and he hadn't done it either. We had made promises to each other that we would do long speak together, and we did, and that was epic on an hour and a half of sleep. I do not recommend that.
And then with winter hiking in the mountains, obviously it's much different than summer hiking. And I know
Oh
that I
yeah,
was talking to a guy in mountaineers, and just the amount of preparation that goes into mountaineering, because you're more mountaineering at that point. You're walking on ice
yes,
fields, you're walking on snow, and it's just a whole different
yeah,
experience.
yeah.
So if you want to talk about
Um,
that
yeah.
and how you
So
what kind of drug you into that side of things, because that's a whole nother realm,
it's a
I
whole
feel like.
nother beast. um, so once again, my friend Tommy, I tell him how much I hate him. I promise I love him. So Tommy, if you're listening, I do love you very much. I thank you for putting me in those situations. But I also trust him, right? Like he has
Yeah,
done, I think, now over 40 14ers, so many in the winter, obviously in the summer. I mean, he's just beast mode. Um, I wish a
your
little bit
your voice cut out
more.
when you said wish.
Oh,
Can so just say that
oh,
again. I'll be able to edit it out, so no problem.
oh, yeah. So I just wish he would have told me how much harder it was going to be. Um,
I mean,
like I don't know what I was thinking. So it was La Plata, and this was, oh man, I I think it will be like 2 years by this winter or like whatever spring, well, whenever it was. I could probably look back at my phone and see. Um, but it was La Plata, which typically is a class two. So once again, here we are doing class twos as my first time in something on a 14er. And I did buy snow, or I did not buy snowshoes. I borrowed some, which was fine. I would definitely recommend just going to like somewhere that just has some good like heavy snow and practice snowshoeing, because your walk is a little bit different. And I tell girls, because girls, you typically kind of like cross over their legs. I'm like, have more of like a wider stance, or like a butch walk. Little like lesbian terms there. But yeah, a little bit more of like a butch walk with that, because you have these huge snowshoes on that give you that buoyancy to, be over the snow. And it's weird going into it because you're walking and you are, in a sense, like floating on top of the snow. And you do go down maybe like an inch or two, just kind of depending on how well the snow is packed or anything like that. And just be aware that if you did have to take off your snowshoes, which just don't, um, you're gonna fall in about, I mean, I have fallen in hip up, or like up to my hips. So that's no fun. Avoid trees. There's something weird called like where
it's
trees like
the
vacuum you.
it's the yeah, it's in skiing too. You don't want to take off your skis if it's like a powder day. So like, and then also the trees, they get the kit, like the concavity inside of it, and you can fall into it, kind of like a crevasse, and
Yeah.
people can get stuck and die in this. So
Yes. So just avoid
I know what you're
them.
talking about.
And just know the snow is definitely deeper than what you think it is, because you are with snowshoes. Also, like pack micro spikes. A lot of times you are not going to need crampons unless you are going to be going over, like a big glacier, like something like Mount Rainier is going to be where you're going to need crampons. A
Yeah.
lot of the times here, you won't, except maybe on like a major class 3, class 4, and you're going up the Kool-Aid and you are there's definitely going to be like thicker ice patches there, where you need something of like a long enough spike. Other than that, get micro spikes. I do the Catula brand. They're like $70. That's another advice. Pack them always. So first time on my winter 14er, we got to the head wall of La Plata, and this is where you kind of scramble up and you gain the ridge, and that's where you kind of meet up with where the summer route kind of is. So that is the point where you're supposed to take off your snowshoes and put on micro spikes. I did not pack mine, even though my friend did tell me to. So always like triple, quadruple check that you do have them. We didn't summit anyways because out of nowhere, a storm came through, and we just had to get off, get back into tree line. And by the time we were in tree line, then it all stopped. And it's like, well, it's too late at this point. We're just, I'll come back for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, prepare for the worst of that. Still wear your base layers, still, stay nice and warm. I do get warm sometimes where I'm just shedding layers, but honestly, you might as well have those layers just in case, than to be ill prepared for it. Yeah, and it does get harder to eat too. I will say that. I don't know why.
I forget
But it does
what
get
it's
really
called.
hard.
I forget what it's called, but there's a medical term for it. And essentially, with the whole blood thinning and all that, once you're higher in the
Mm-hmm.
altitude, there's something about that lowers your metabolism. Well, not lowers it, but it makes your body think that your metabolism's lower, but it's actually like sky high.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
burning all these calories, but your body's kind of like tricked into thinking that it's not. So you have to kind of force yourself to eat. So that's always,
Yeah.
I forget the
For me,
medical
it's
term.
just
I'd
like
have to look
so
it up.
hard to like swallow like things. So
Yeah, wait,
I
look it up real
suggest things
fast.
that are like really easy to eat. Like I don't bring like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because I feel like I have like cotton mouth or something. It's just a super dry mouth where I can't swallow something like peanut butter. So I'll do like little gummies, like energy gummies or like fruit snacks. Sometimes I'll, just grab some form of like chips just to get more carbs in. But just something that I know I could just swallow a little easier. And drink like water. Like you were saying, there's some medical term. For some reason, I just don't drink as much
It's
water
it's not a
in the
medical
winter.
term. I just looked it up, and there's not really a medical term for it, but it's definitely a known thing. When you're hiking at altitude or doing anything at altitude, you don't feel like you need to drink or eat as much. When in reality, you should probably be eating and drinking more because your body's always working at that higher
Oh
threshold
yeah.
because your heart rate, even your resting heart rate's at like higher than it would be at base level.
Oh yeah.
So
My
you're
resting heart rate is usually at like 100, 110
yep.
when I'm up high. Yeah.
So
For sure.
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
see a
and
actual term, but it's definitely a thing, and I've felt it. And anyone who's probably been at
yes.
altitude's probably felt it. Like, oh, I'm not hungry, and then by the end of the night, you get back and you're just like, wow, I have no energy anymore,
Yeah, you just depleted everything and
and you didn't
you're like,
replenish
what
any of
is
it.
going on? Yeah, and I'm always like packing Gatorade or even just like an energy drink. Even though they're super high in sugar, but
I mean, you need
I
the.
mean, you just need it. You need it.
I
Like you
mean,
said, your body is working.
salt's another one of those things that people don't get enough of.
Yep.
So I mean,
Yep.
it's like normally if you're not working out real hard, yeah, you don't want to put all these, but like you're sweating all these things out, you're losing your
Yes.
electrolytes, you're losing all these things that you need to get back, or else you're just going to be
Yes.
a zombie.
Exactly. I mean, like if you want to just like pack some pickle juice go
Does
ahead.
not sound good.
Right? It's like super high in sodium, and it'll prevent that cramping from happening, and just helps you replenish a little bit more too. But for something a little bit more flavorful, Gatorade works out really well, and you have your electrolytes and there. But yeah, so after La Plata, I did do Massive. Reason why we did not summit Massive is because once again, you think it's going to be this 14-mile round trip. We got to mile 7 and we were like another mile away, maybe a little less than a mile away from the summit, and it was so late. And I just remember like just crying. Not like because I was sad. I was just so tired. And I'm like, I just want to nap right here. And we just turned around. And then after that, I did Quandary, which if you do want to do a winter 14er, just start off with something like Quandary. That was one I was able to summit. It was 30-mile-per-hour wind, which for Quandary is a great day. For some reason, it just gets so windy on just that whole like range, like that and Sherman. I'm trying to, all those peaks, like even to Calibron, just that whole range. It's just so windy. So that was actually one of my fastest times. I think because the wind was just blowing in my face and I just kept my head down. I was wearing goggles that helps protect you. And I just kept my head down and just like did not stop moving. I mean, so I think that's why it was my fastest. I did summit. It was great. And I mean, it's a shorter one too. So you might as well just do it in the winter if you do want to get into a winter 14er.
How many miles is it round trip?
They say online, I think online it says 6.75, but I think I clocked it at like 7.5. So, I mean, once they're out of tree line and you're just going straight up to the summit on Quandary, we kind of were just creating our own switchbacks. And, because doing a switchback will be a little bit easier on your hike.
Yeah.
Than just walking straight up as far as like your energy levels go. But yeah, after a certain point, you are just walking straight up to the summit of Quandary. And you do see it the whole time, which is nice. There's no like false summit, but it's so tiring, especially if the wind is blowing on your face. It feels like 1 million needles are just going straight into your skin.
Yeah, the wind can get bad. I mean, I just know the coldest that I'd skied at was like, I think it was like 7 or 10 degrees, and on the backside of the mountain was whiteout conditions. And when you got up to the top,
Oh my gosh.
the whole lift was just being blown back. So just,
oh wow.
I've not really got to experience too much of the crazy weather in the mountains yet, but I've experienced a little bit. So, and that wind can be killer.
It can be. And that's the other thing too, like whenever you're looking at the weather and just the temperature and all of that, it might say, on the mountain weather forecast that it's going to be 26 degrees, but in the winter, make sure, and summer too, like look at wind chill, and that is what you're going to be feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one that you summited, so was that your friend that took you on your first winter, or did you do that with someone else?
I actually did that one with someone else because my friend had already done Quandary.
Gotcha.
And he did not want to repeat it unless it was a different route, because there is a really fun class 3 route on Quandary. So we just did the standard route. Just one of my friends, it was his first winter 14er, and he did it. He killed it. He was like, oh my gosh, that was so much harder than I thought. I was like, yeah, I mean, winter, winter anything is going to be just a lot harder.
I feel like
But yeah, it was good.
there's just a certain point where, and I mean, I've talked to people who've climbed all this other stuff, all these extreme sports. Everyone seems to have the mindset of like, once it starts to like suck, it just kind of just get lost in your own mind. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I know at
Oh,
least for me, whenever it gets to
absolutely.
like that bad, like when it gets bad, all of a sudden you just kind of get lost in your own mind and it's just step, or whatever it is
Yes.
that you're doing.
Um, so I do something, I mean, I don't know if other hikers do this. It's just what I do to just stay focused on just continue your steps, keep hiking up. Um, I give myself a goal to like not take a break. So I'll say, okay, I need to do 200 steps, but I might count it in twos or I might count it in odd, like, I might count in the twos and like odd numbers or even numbers, whatever that may be. And then I'm like constantly trying to break my goal. So I'm like, oh, well, I still feel really good. Like I don't feel like I need a break and I'm at 200. So I'm just going to keep going until I'm tiring myself out. And I mean, that is something that we even do in Camp Gladiator where you tire out the muscle. Which before I was a trainer with Camp Gladiator, I was what we call a camper, so just an attendee. And endurance week was, I mean, it's not my favorite, just because you are working out the whole time, but it's so important just
Endurance
to
week.
endure. Yeah, just like your muscle endurance and really pushing your just body to continue on is so important. I mean, yes, it's a mental game as well, but to train your body how to tire out your muscles and really know when you need that break or you truly just cannot go on anymore. I mean, listen to your body, but you really will know and feel it. Um, yeah, it's so important. So that's why, like, on the hikes, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I broke my 200. Let's see how much more I can go.
Makes sense. I know I just kind of start thinking about other things and just kind of try and get my mind off it. And it's kind of like you, yourself, and just nature at that point. It doesn't matter if I'm with a group or anything like that. If I'm doing something difficult, it's always at some point, everything else just kind of like disappears. All sounds and everything else just seems to like, it's just
Yeah,
kind of gets I don't know how to describe it exactly because it's a hard feeling
it just
unless
goes
you've been through it.
silent.
Yeah. Unless you've
Yeah,
been
it's
through
just
it
like,
and you've hit that point of just where the suck is so bad, you're just like, there's nothing else.
yeah, yeah, I don't know how to describe it either, except you definitely are in your head. It's almost like, I guess the best way for me to describe it is you're almost, you forget that you're even outside, like your
Yeah.
body is moving and you're in your head of like emptiness and silence. And it's really trippy.
I You
You're
kind of
like,
need to
did
get
I
there.
take a drug?
I feel like the
Like,
people that don't keep doing the like hard things like that and don't continue on with it, that you kind of need to be able to get to that space. If you can't, you're just going to be focusing way too much on the suck and be like, ah, this is terrible. I don't want to do this anymore. And once you start getting
yeah,
into that mindset, it's game over. So it's like,
it's almost like you're trying to look at within yourself and try to, like, if your body did have a true voice, like trying to listen to your body instead of thinking about how bad the situation is.
yeah, because your body can
Yeah,
definitely take more than you think it can usually. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I tell people, whenever I'm training them or even on hikes. I mean, sometimes I'll even just like coach myself, and that could just be like the like athlete part in me because I was a
yeah,
big track athlete. And so I'm like, come on, Natalie, like you could do it. And like you're yelling at yourself and you're like, wow, I am so weird.
I mean, that's all individual sports. I feel like you have to be your
Yeah,
own. Like, even if there's other people cheering you on, you're your own. It's just you, and that's it. In all those individual sports, I mean, yeah, you might be a
exactly.
part of a team, but when it comes down to it, you're the one doing, and that's you're the only one out there doing it. So it doesn't matter about everyone else around you. It's just you, and either for you it was the track. Climbing and skiing are my two favorite sports. So very individual sports. Yeah, you have your
Yeah.
layer like, hey, you can do one more move, you can do this, and like it's nice to have that little bit of extra backup, but most of it comes from internal for all the individual sports.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
and
and like you were saying, like the two more, two more reps or two more steps, you're like, you do start asking yourself, you try to stop or you don't want to continue on. You're like, give me five more, just go five more steps. And then you just go and you're like, oh man, now I'm at 50 steps. It's like, okay, the summit is right there. And then you're like, okay, you see the summit, and you're like going, going, going. 'Cause you're just like, I just want this over with.
yeah, get to the downhill.
Yeah, which I definitely like downhill. I mean, a lot of guys are gonna say that the um uh
You cut out just a little
easier
bit. You cut
and
out just a little bit. Just start
oh,
start back at some guys is where was the last thing I
oh
heard.
yeah. So a lot of guys will say that going up is a lot easier than their
Depends.
descent because yeah, and it just depends on like the guy. I mean, the scientific biology part is women have a lower center of gravity. And so, therefore, we don't feel that like pressure and pain as much when we are going down. And if you think about it, women typically have like, um, based off of their body, will have just bigger legs than like arm strength or like calves, right? Versus guys will focus a lot more on their arms and be more like top heavy versus like focusing on their legs, which I mean, your quads are the largest muscle group, so you should be.
Yeah.
It also helps with relieving any type of like knee pain. The stronger your quads are, the less pain that you would feel in your knees. And that goes for like
Well,
either gender.
scientifically, you're just taking pressure off your knees because the more that your muscles are just taking more of the burden. So there's less of that.
Exactly.
You got more, what's it called? Spring, I guess, more cushion,
Mm-hmm.
more
Yeah.
compression, like resistance. So it's not
Yes.
putting the wear and tear on your knees as much.
Exactly. And I tell people that with when they are experiencing knee pain, I'm like, you should just look into strengthening your quads a bit more, do some resistance training with it. I mean, just make them a lot stronger, and I promise it will help. But yeah, I definitely prefer going down. I'm so much faster at it. I mean, I can be a lot slower in like a group. I would say like out of like super avid hikers, probably like right there in the middle. So they might be at the top, and then by the time I get down and they're going down, well, I'm going to catch up to them going down because I can be super fast on
Yeah,
that.
gotcha. So now to, I guess, training. So I'm sure after the first one, you knew you had to get in shape a little bit more to start hitting more of them, it sounds like. So what
Definitely.
was kind of the first things that you start doing to try and get ready for future 14ers after that first one that you did?
So, I mean, as I mentioned, I was already doing Camp Gladiator
Yeah.
because I had started that out in Texas. And then when I moved here, luckily they also had outdoor locations. Um, and I am asthmatic. So for me, I focused a lot on cardio and just strengthening my lungs as far as, me being an asthmatic went. So strengthening my lungs, doing cardio, trying to endure more. So a lot of like muscle endurance, like I mentioned. Um, Another thing too that like Camp Gladiator does is this strength and agility side. And I focus a lot on this agility part. So that's going to be everything from just like how you like your reaction, that reflex, because you're hiking and this can come from experience too. Like you don't have to do this cross training like I do. I know a lot of people that don't, and they just go and experience different hikes and get better that way. But it is nice to know that like I have trained my brain to where if something happens, my, you know, muscles are able to react very quickly and correct it, you know. So if you step wrong, you know, how fast can I grab onto something secure or change my, you know, planning of my foot or whatever that may be to save my life. I mean, I've definitely, like on La Plata, was in a situation where I had slipped on that head wall and I had to think very quickly before I just shot off 1,000 feet. And, you know, that was to just take my trekking pole as fast as I could because I did not have an ice axe. And I just did the strongest force I could right into the ground, and then flex my feet up and try to secure myself, to stop that momentum. So like endurance, agility, and then I mean just like mentally know like that part's hard to train, but
Mental
just
game's
know like what
always
you're
the hardest without
yeah,
doing it. Mental game
yeah,
is it holds I feel like in every adventure sport that's like the biggest hold back for people is that, and
yes,
I'm sure in 14ers, which I don't know many people in that do like a ton of those, but I'm sure there's people that starting off like you get like halfway there and like you question if you can even do it, and then like the mental
yes,
being like yes I can, and just like staying on
yes,
point. And I know with climbing for me, getting past your first big lead fall is a terrifying thing because taking your first lead fall that's like, and like your first real lead fall outside is just it's a little terrifying because you're above the your last piece of equipment and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fall and it's gonna be like 30 feet, and it's there's that moment of like, but being able to not let that creep into your mind, that fear that's just kind of there, that's not real fear, but it's fear because you're like, this has never happened before. So at least in climbing, you grab before that first fall, like, and you really get mentally stronger and like mental, like you're above the wall and you trust your gear and you can actually climb
right.
hard. You, if you get scared, you kind of like tense up and like grab the wall harder and then just stop climbing. And then at that point, you've pretty much doomed yourself to fall no matter what. So
Right,
I'm sure
right, because your
there's
body
a,
does fall.
yeah, and I'm sure there's that aspect to 14ers too. If you get like fearful, like you're just that fear, people don't realize, drains energy so fast whenever you get
Yes,
anything
it's
like that.
yeah, it's either, I mean, like Psychology 101, fight or flight,
Yep.
and, you know, like, are you going to fight or are you going to let fear take over? And probably, I mean, depending on the sport, right, like,
Yeah.
can lead to, death.
Yeah.
Like, hate to say it, but it's our reality being, um, you know, out there in the great outdoors, like as beautiful as it is. Like, remember, Mother Nature is super strong and she will win,
Every single time.
you know, if yeah, every single time. So yeah, just like the mentality. I mean, that's it's hard to train, like me and you have both said. I think as long as you just know the situation. So like continue asking as many questions, you know, what can happen and just know the risk, know how hard it's going to be. I just had a friend who is out here on vacation, and I noticed on their Insta story that they did quandary and super, super like bodybuilding type guy. And I was just talking to him about it. I was like, hey, like, how is quandary? Saw that you did it. Like, congrats. Like, huge, man. And he was like, that was the hardest thing ever. And I felt so out of shape. I'm like,
Well,
yeah, well,
bodybuilders aren't built for
yeah,
that. Same with
yeah,
climbing.
they're not.
It's funny. I was taking in people to climb for the first time, and they're like super buff, like, oh, I work out in the gym all the time. This is going to be easy. And then they get like 2 climbs
Nope.
in, it's like, I'm done.
Yeah, like maybe you're not going to feel it on your muscles like as much, but you're going to feel it mentally and in your lungs for
Plus,
sure.
same with hiking is as with any with like climbing too. And I feel like keeping fit is like, when I say fit, yeah, the bodybuilders are fit. I'm talking about like lean, I guess. So being lean
Yeah,
in climbing and hiking, because every pound that you have on is an
huge.
extra pound that you are carrying up that hill. So if you're
Exactly.
100 pounds of muscle heavier, you're carrying up an extra 100 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight. It's not like,
Yeah. And I mean, with that being said, like, I don't want anyone to think that if they're heavier, so like if they are not muscle
yeah,
heavy, they're just more fat heavy. I have seen all different body shapes going up
oh yeah,
14ers. Like, you can do it. Just know it is going to be very mental, but cardio really helps. And the only reason why, like, you do typically see people up on these higher elevation hikes are lean is because they probably are focusing more on cardio, which does create lean muscle versus bulking up the muscle. Um, and that's just like how the biology happens, of our of when you are doing these type of sports. So because in a sense it's a marathon. I mean, you're
yeah,
doing these climbs, hikes, and it is a straight up marathon.
yeah. No, I definitely feel that. So with the training for you, I mean, you do the Camp Gladiators at the main thing. Well, obviously that's probably the main thing that you do. So what's the mix of, what do you focus on mainly when it comes to, obviously it's a full body, but what are the main muscle groups that are most important when it comes to hiking 14ers, do you think?
Well, legs. I mean, strengthening your quads. So everything from, your squats. I really make sure that I'm going below parallel. I see so many people, they do like these baby squats. I'm like, that does nothing. And there's different squat positions that can strengthen different parts of, your upper leg area. So your inner thighs, which are your adductors. Obviously, you have your quads, strengthening your hamstrings, which can come from deadlifts. For me, because, like, let's be honest, I don't like push ups. And, and it's because I don't have good like arm strength. And so, like, try out everything in the outdoors, or even if it's like indoor climbing, and kind of get a feel for, are my arms strong enough for my body weight, and just see like what type of level you're at with that. And that will also kind of help you determine like what body parts and muscle groups you need to focus on. I definitely like focus on strengthening my arms just a bit more, because I was a dancer for about 10 years, and so my legs are solid. And because my legs are a lot easier to work out than my arms, like, I'm still doing it. Obviously, it's full body workout, but I definitely try to strengthen my arms a bit more because, yeah, you might be in that situation where your legs aren't going to save you. Your arms are. And
Yeah.
like your grip, it's like trying to strengthen your forearms. A lot of people don't even think about their forearms a lot. They think of like biceps, triceps. Like, strengthen your forearms, because I'm sure you feel it like as a climber. Really
Popeye
that's where
arms.
you're feeling. Yeah, well, and you feel it right up there on your forearm part. I know whenever I've done indoor climbs, um, I'm like, oh my gosh, my forearms hurt.
It goes
Um,
away after a while. It goes away after a
it
while.
does. Yeah. And it's just like working on your grip
Yeah.
and strengthening that. It's like one of those harder muscle group areas to work on, and your triceps too.
I feel like
But
going
that's,
going on. I feel like core is probably a huge thing too. Just keeping your core
yes.
super strong, because
Hmm.
and anything with that moving back and forth, you're hiking, that core is
Yeah.
gonna add a lot of energy to
Yes.
each
And a
step.
lot of people think their core is like having a six pack. It is not, people. It is
Nope.
not. It is like your core. Okay, guys, like think of the earth. What, the very center is called the core. So think the very center internal part of like your muscle group and your body, that is your core. So like, yes, doing like an ab series will help, but I mean, there's so many different things that you can do just to like activate your core. And anytime you are working out, like doing any form of like full body cross training, you should be activating your core. So like when you're doing a squat and you come back to that standing position, you should like flex your abs, okay? And then that's how you know you're activating your core and like pushing your hip flexors forward. Um, that's like a good way to kind of figure out like what your core, like where it is, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I felt that. That did feel different.
Awesome. I guess besides all that, is there anything else that you're into with the outdoors? I know that the 14s are like your big thing. I didn't know if you were into anything else, but that's pretty much all the questions I
Yeah,
kind of had.
I have not gone like snowboarding or skiing yet. I definitely want to. And I want to experience going like ice climbing, because that could, I mean, that seems very fun and exhilarating. I definitely want to try that out some point this winter. But I mean, in the winter time, besides like doing a 14er, I do just enjoy like a good like nature hike, and just walking over and completely iced out lake is just, I don't know, it's
Satisfying.
different, it's fun. Yeah, and you're like Jesus walking over water, but this thing is totally frozen. And then it's also terrifying. You're like, oh my gosh, like what if it cracks right now?
There's those videos where it's
uh,
like, what's the name of the ice that's like just thin enough that you can barely like ice skate on it, and it makes that super. I've seen the videos of people like
so
ice skating on it. It makes that really cool noise, and it's like when it's super
I
smooth water and it's just barely frozen enough, and it makes that like
yes,
echoey noise when they're ice skating on it, and that's just that would be
I
trippy.
don't know the name of it, but I have been over a lake that did that. And that was terrifying. I'm like, I'm off. I'm done. No, I'm not doing, I'm staying on a trail. And just be aware, guys, like when you are doing winter hikes, you may be going over a lake and you have no idea. So just read the trail and like
Yeah.
know your map and
At a certain
all
point in
of
the
that.
winter, it's definitely going to be frozen over though.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, as far as like just like hiking, I mean, I've gotten into camping, which is great. I want to, now that I know that I'm good with like camping. There is a reason why I didn't go camping for a long time, and that's just because I'm severely allergic to a lot of different bug bites. And I'm not allowed to have an EpiPen. So yeah, but camping was good. I have figured out ways to prevent myself from getting bit. And now I want to go into some backpacking. So,
Backpacking
doing
is a lot of
through
fun.
hikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, doing that through hiking. So for those who don't know what a through hiker is, that is when you're going days and days hiking. So like Colorado Trail would be something super epic for me to do, even if I like just broke it down like every weekend or something of that sort. That would be really rad.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I have. You can shout out. Natalie is a Camp Gladiator instructor, so I will have her info up about that if you'd be interested. She is digital right now, so everything is online. So
Yes, yeah, and we just opened back up outdoors. So I am at Washington Park and Kramer Park as well. So yeah, like come just hit me up and we could do like a 1 week free type situation, get you to try it out. And just like for me, it may help you out as a hiker, and maybe you're trying to prepare for big hikes.
or any other sport, I'm sure, because it seems
Yeah,
like a
or
full
any
body.
other
Yeah.
sport.
So yeah.
It is. It's a full body cross training style. It's a progressive program. So, like I had talked about the endurance, strength, and agility, we do interval as well. And then peak. So, that's where you test your limits. Just like
Awesome.
those 14ers and your
Yeah.
rock climbing, test your limits.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Happy to have you, and I will see you guys on the next episode.